So hi and a warm welcome to everybody watching today's event. In our ongoing series about unified service management, today we're going to be talking about the universal process model for service management. Now, effective service management relies pretty much on clear, well-defined processes to ensure that services are delivered efficiently and obviously align with your business objectives. I mean, if you prioritize well-written processes, organizations can pretty much enhance efficiency and improve their quality. But there's a word of warning here. A bad process implemented perfectly is still a bad process. Now, today, Ella's over in the social chat, so please let her know your name and the city from where you're joining. This is an interactive event, so just get involved in the chat. If you've got any questions for the panel, please feel free to enter them into the chat. We'll get them over to the team to answer live while we're on air. So we have actually got a fantastic panel of experts joining us for today's show. So let's jump right in and meet them. So welcome, everybody. Our first panelist for today I'm going to introduce Jan. So Jan has been the architect and author of USM. Let's make that clear up front. He's also an enterprise service management architect, and he likes to help reduce complexity and achieve sustainable improvements using the USM model. I mean, in addition to writing more books than I don't even know how he has time to write them, but I think it's over 100. Okay? You can catch him on LinkedIn, have a look at Jan, look for SURVUZ Foundation, and just follow, and you'll find out huge amounts about not only USM, but all kinds of service management. So welcome, Jan.
Yeah, great to be here. I think we're nearing the heart of the system in this session, so this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. This is an interesting one. I've been looking forward to this one since event one, actually, on processes. All right. Mikko is an experienced service management advisor, coach, and trainer and consultant. I think he pretty much lives, eats, breathes, and sleeps service management. But I think it's fair to say he likes to take the mystique and mumbo jumbo out of service governance and service management. With so many years, over 20 experience in the trenches, a lot of them share the same symptoms, according to Mikko, and I think it's his passion to try to rectify that. Welcome, Mikko.
Thanks, and you got that correct. So mumbo and jumbo.
True, mumbo jumbo. So just a word of warning for everybody, Mikko is having a few issues with his connection. Hopefully it'll stabilize during today's show. I'm going to introduce Sönke next. Sönke is new to the panel for today. He's also got over 20 years experience in the forefront of service management, and he's also demonstrates a huge commitment in elevating service cultures within diverse organizations. And it's really great, Sönke, to have you on the team today. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm also happy to join the group of older white men, and it's always worth to rethink what we learned about processes. So I'm looking forward to this session.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, John Worthington has over 40 years experience in the IT industry. I mean, in every aspect of IT, including sales, business development, everything else you could possibly think of. And he is incredibly passionate about the USM framework. And he was also the first USM professional coach in the US. So John, welcome back. Really great to have you on the event again.
Thank you, Nigel.
Really good to have everybody here. So I can see over in our socials that we have got so many people joining today. Let's just give a couple of folks a shout out. So Sanjay from Kuwait, we've got really great to have somebody from Kuwait. We've got Elizabeth from South Africa. Welcome to my home country. Welcome from my home country, should we say. Well, we've got Jaap coming in from Holland, which is great. Donabet, welcome back. I remember you. Donabet was in the previous event all the way from Singapore. We've got Godfrey from Germany, Jeffrey, should we say, joining from Germany. We've got Michael from Ireland. So tons and tons of people. Really great to have you all online today. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just shout and we will get them over to the panel live. So I think let's jump straight in and take our first question. And this is really a core question here. And this question is, why are processes important? So Jan, I'm going to start with you on this one, being the author and architect of this framework. So kick us off on this.
I think that you've already mentioned this in the beginning, in the introduction. For the last 100 and more years, I think we've learned to understand processes as the shortest way to the goal And in that way, they support the efficiency and the consistency and the scalability of organizations, the productivity, as you said, and for instance, also the transparency, because you can see what the order of things is. And if you use those process approaches, you can streamline the organization. You can eliminate redundancies. You can get in control of what you do in terms of delivering the value that we are all trying to achieve. So it's not even just that. It's also about cost, because if you want to reduce the cost, you must know exactly what you do and how you allocate the resources in which order. And the only way to do so is being in control of what you do, and that starts with processes. Even the companies that don't see that still think they are producing goods or using projects only, they should realize that they are living in a service-dominant world where everything in modern economy has turned into a service. I think that's a lot of benefits to convince everyone that they should use a process approach to organizing their work.
Makes sense to me, absolutely. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, as Jan said, one of the key aspects of process is repeatability. So whoever is doing something for a customer, whatever they're doing and how they're doing it, if it's working well for customers, we want to do that again and again, right? We want to repeat that because it's making a success. So, and I agree, if we can do that in 3 steps instead of 5 steps, it becomes more efficient. It saves us money. So that gets to the efficiency aspect. The other thing that is important about processes, they're monitored, they're controlled. So if customers' needs change, or if we're not doing something right, we can take corrective action or adjust or adapt the process. Yeah. So those are all reasons why, if we want to keep focused on customers, we need to understand our work streams and our processes.
John, thanks. I think that really sums it up very eloquently. Sönke, I'm going to come to you next, if you don't mind.
Yes. Yes, as it is said, processes make things predictable and reliable. So if everybody follows the same steps, so we really get an overview what is happening, and that's the foundation to streamline processes and really consolidate them. So they're the foundation of everything we do in service management.
Fantastic. So I think that summarizes pretty much why processes are important. And I think the efficiency, cost element, and service provisioning, it's very hard to do any of those things well if you haven't really investigated and actually developed formal processes that work. But I also want to add a caveat here. Processes shouldn't be built for the sake of having a process. Okay? Not every single thing needs a process. That's also true. But most things do if you're in a service provisioning environment. But be careful. There are some ways that you can make an absolute hash of this. Okay? By trying to create a process, you know what? I'm not going to talk too much about that now because I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But suffice it to say, even if you haven't really implemented processes and you're still manufacturing something or delivering a service to organizations, you're probably still using a process, just not written down or matured, and it could therefore really be optimized. All right. So let's take a look at what our next question is. Next question is, why has there been so much confusion about processes for so many years? Now, John, I'm going to start off with you, if you don't mind, with this one. So why don't you kick us off on this?
Well, as you can see, I've lost most of my hair over the years, and that's one of the reasons why is, processes can really get you to pull your hair out, right? And I think one of the reasons there's so much confusion about processes, we're analyzing work streams, right? We tend to take an operational perspective. And when we get into operational analysis, we start decomposing things. So we look at activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, and we start drilling down. So what happens in activity 1? And we have a sub-process, and we have, activity 1A, 1B, 1C. And we keep drilling down and drilling down. We decompose things. So we start confusing processes with procedures, and we add things like swim lanes and tools and all kinds of diagrams. And then we get practices involved, and each practice puts their own spin on the analysis, and the result is a lot of confusion. And one of the things I found is everyone will use the term process for any stream of related activity at any level. That's another source of confusion. So if you ask somebody what's the process, well, their process is from their perspective. And if you ask someone senior in your organization, you get a much higher level view of process. So the term process has really been, I won't say probably misunderstood. It's misused. This diagram really illustrates the essence of a process. It focuses on what has to happen. So, the original intent of process is to focus on what happens. When we analyze streams of related activity, when we do process analysis, we start adding who and how and all kinds of other things, and that really gets us down to what USM calls a practice level, and that's a huge source of the confusion, I think.
Yeah. That's very, very true, actually. I couldn't agree more. Sönke, I'm going to come to you next. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, when we look, we see that people, or like in general, there's a confusion about what is a process, what is a practice, even what is a service. So like, I still have my hairs, but like I also like always struggle understanding, that even like anything becomes a process, anything, that could happen. And as it was already mentioned, like we need an architecture that shows, that defines what is a process. So we are on process level, then we talk about activities, then we can go down and understand who is doing these activities, then we talk about the procedure, and then how it's done. Then we come down to work instruction, and all these that are 3 routines on different levels then help us to define what is a process. So USM is unique in that way that it gives a clear definition about what is there, and then really helps us to decompose our practices, our activities, and whatsoever, and then we can become efficient. That's my point of view.
Yeah, I like that. And I think this diagram sums it up really pretty much, very clearly and very easily. It's the what, the who, and the how, right? Going from process, procedure, and work instruction, very easily broken down and understood. Thanks so much for that answer. Mikko, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's most of the dazzle comes from when we start working from the work instruction level. And be careful if any technology vendor tells you that, okay, this will do your processes out of the box. No, it won't. So it always starts with the logic, what needs to be done, then add the who's and the how's. So when we work with technology, when we work with tools, we are already at the practices level, we are already in a work instruction level. Solve the logic first, make it straightforward and working, and then go to roles, and then go to tools.
Great advice, Mikko. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Jan, your final thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, maybe you can bring back that image, because that was a nice image that Sönke used.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Because everyone in the world, of course, we know we are drowning in complexity. That means that everything that is killing us and our business in terms of if it's going wrong, like fires, you must first extinguish the fire. So the attention goes to the fire fighting, and that's on the lowest level because that's where it burns. But this image explains a psychological reason why people don't look at processes, because if you take a good look, you see a connection from the people factor, the who, to only the concept of procedure and work instruction. The who is not involved in the process. it simply doesn't relate to process. As soon as it relates to process, it has turned into a procedure. So the first thing of interest for any human being is the procedure and the work instruction. So that's why we have tended to look at only procedures and work instructions for decades now without thinking about what was the origin of this, what was behind the procedures and work instructions. And that was the concept of process that does not include the who. So we've done that for decades now, and as Einstein said, if you do what you did, you get what you got. So if we continue going on this way, we only focus on the work instructions, which is, as Sönke said, the practical side, the practices of what organizations do. So we must rethink everything we've done in terms of developing the routines to look at the things behind this, the heart of the system, which is actually the concept of process. Now, as John already said, people are using the concept of process, the word process, for anything that moves. Any sequence of actions with anything inside is called a process. And if you go to, let's say you go to Amazon and you open up 100 books with the term process in the title, every one of them will have the same image of the sequence of activities on page 1. And then they use the term process for anything that conflicts with that diagram.
Yeah.
That's what's happened in ITIL. They call everything a process, and actually they meant something of the level of procedure and generalized work instructions, because that's the practice. So that's where the whole confusion has started. USM does the opposite. We use a pure definition of process, and we stick with that. We are consistently applying that, and now we suddenly see the wood through the we see the trees through the wood, woods through the tree. What's the verb? Finally, it gets clear.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, and thanks for clarifying that. And I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people do get hooked up on the work instructions part and that's where often their starting point. And it does really help to take a step back and look at why are you doing this in the first place? You know, because we've always done it that way is the typical answer I've always got back. You know, and whenever I get that answer back, it was always, well, again, I'll come back to you. Why are you doing it like this?
Yes.
Okay? Because we wrote it down once in our QMS, you know, or we wrote it down once in our procedural manual, you know, and so therefore every software tool, everything that we do from now on has to follow that work instruction, you know, and procedure. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Go back one step and start to think about what is the service you're actually trying to provide, and does the process that you have thought of, if you even have thought of at a process level, does it follow what you need to do? So yeah, good points. So everybody, you heard it here first. Yeah, that's why there's been so much confusion about processes for so many years. And I think we've cleared that up in a nutshell just in this 5 minutes. All right, thanks everybody. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is, more specifically, how does the USM method differentiate between a process and a practice? Now, Jan, I'm going to come to you first on this if you don't mind.
Yeah, we've given this a lot of thought because we ran into the confusion about using the word process for anything that moves. So what USM did is we came up with a number of requirements. So I think you got an image of that. There's 10 requirements that we defined, and we want to apply all 10 of them before we use the term process for something, because otherwise everything will be turned into a process. So there's 10 actual requirements, and if you look at the first one, it says the process only describes the what and what has happened to be successful, and not the who and not the how, the technology, the means that you use. So anytime you see a process description with who or how in it, it gives it away it's not a process. And there's another interesting one, and the number 4 is an easy one. Processes are not depending upon practical conditions. So anytime you see a sequence of activities with a gateway symbols, that thing, that has a practical condition, it immediately says, hey, there's a how in here, so that's not a process. That is a practice. So that's how we developed a number of things that we are going to call process in the future by applying the 10 rules, the 10 requirements for anything that should be compliant with this before we call it a process.
I love that. That absolutely makes it so much easier when you
One additional comment in terms of process management. if there's a gateway symbol, like the number 4 requirement, if you use BPMN with swim lanes, there's a who inside, and there's a lot of gateways inside. So actually, that's always one thing I love. BPMN is called Business Process Management Notation. But actually, we can now prove that it's not Business Process Management Notation, it's Business Practice Management Notation. Still BPMN, but it's something entirely different.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a process. You're right. It is a practice.
Yeah.
That is said to, and I think that's where a lot of people get really confused. And not only people, other frameworks out there, Jan, are using this incorrectly in many instances. I've seen that in many, many writings, many blogs, many frameworks, and it's a challenge. And I think it confuses people enormously. So here it is, folks, for simplified. Mikko, I think you had something to add to this.
Yeah, that's actually a challenge for everyone listening and replay or live here, is trying to change the way you think. Just open up your mind a bit. Go a bit for the what first. And I know there is a huge resistance in organizations. Okay, we are used to calling them business processes. But even if you do call yours processes, open your mind and look at them from this perspective. So we have the USM lens for all the stuff. So it starts with the what, then the who, then the how. And in USM world, we call those practices and work instructions, the procedures, work instructions. But open your mind for it.
Agreed. That is a very, very good point. Don't get stuck down a rabbit hole, because it's very easy to do that. Getting stuck in that rabbit hole, and a lot of frameworks and especially tools force you in that way of thinking, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in my opinion, you should be looking at this long before you try to implement a tool, or even a framework doing that. So good point. John, I think you wanted to add to this as well.
Yeah, I think Mikko really hit the nail on the head. The key design criteria that resonated with me when I first started learning about USM. Processes have a customer relevant purpose. They only describe the what, as Mikko said, not the who or the how, and they don't depend on practical conditions, which I think Jan referred to. And you can go to the USM portal, USM wiki, and get analyze all 10 criteria in detail. But I think one of the things that USM's approach to differentiating processes from practices does is it helps simplify service management. When ITIL shifted from process to practice, the scope dramatically increased. For example, practice guidance added things like people and skills and the tools that they might use, even culture and governance. So the scope just exploded. That does not help simplify things. I think USM really has a very simple, easy to understand process model, and that's been missing for a very, very long time.
I agree with you. I agree with you totally there. Just wanted to say, I'm going to show the QR code again here, but there is a really, really good link on this QR code. Okay, if you scan that, this takes you straight to the USM wiki, and it'll take you to the page which it talks about the process model and the requirements for processes. So please don't forget, guys, you can scan your phone on here, or just take a photo of this page, ignore our faces, and scan the QR code later. But that will give you a lot of information. Okay. Later on, I'll show the QR code for the main wiki page as well. All right. So head over there. There's a lot of information to be had on that wiki, enormous amounts. If you're ever in confusion or doubt about anything, just pop onto the USM Wiki. I found it an enormously helpful resource for many, many aspects of service management. All right, let's take a look at the next question. So what are the things USM qualifies as processes? And for this one, I'm going to kick off with you, Jan, if you don't mind. So let's...
Yeah. Well, of course, first of all, there are sequences of activities and only activities. But John also mentioned another very important criterion, which is if you position USM on a customer-driven maturity level, which is rather high up, you only qualify something as a process if it is triggered by the customer. Anything else that you call a process may be an internal sequence of activities, like in the ITIL version 4, they've got something like between 80 and 100 sequences of activities they call processes, but they are internal affairs. The customer will not see them. They are totally irrelevant for the customer because there's no touch point with them. So these are internal affairs activity streams that you shouldn't call customer-related processes. So from the customer's perspective, there's only 4 types of requests for any support or any facility that you can do. You can ask the provider for a new service or to update an existing service. That is agreed. So the result of that would be a new agreement that then needs to be taken into production. A second option would be that you ask them to change something that is covered within the agreement, and that's a change request. And a change request is not a service request because a change request has a permanent influence on the agreed means that you use, the agreed infrastructure. A service request does not have. If you want to ask some query or whatever, it doesn't change the infrastructure. Well, that's a service request. And a service request is also not an incident. An incident is totally different from anything that delivers something that can be expected and agreed in the service agreement. An incident simply recovers a failure, and it can require a change or not. If it doesn't require a change, you can immediately go into operations, do the thing that is required to resolve the issue, and the thing is recovered. So those are the 4 reactive types of support that any customer can ask from any provider. And of course, there's also another side to the same coin as usual, which is the proactive side of process management. A proactive process is improving the things because the stakeholder here is different. It's not the external customer, it's your internal organization. You yourself want to continuously improve what you have agreed to deliver for the customer. So that's one process, improve, that's going to be used for anything that you can improve, which can be negative in terms of mitigating a threat, but it can also be positive in terms of creating an innovation. Both result in improve, so they are the one and same process. Now, those are the 5 things that USM qualifies as a process. They cover everything any service provider will ever need to do in terms of service management in any line of business, whatever size they are. It doesn't really matter. This is a universal model of what a service provider does for a customer.
Fantastic, Jan. That is so concise and so clear. I think that's one of the things I love about USM is the way that it's just been distilled down into stuff that's really easy to understand, yeah, and makes perfect sense. So really well done on that. Mikko, you wanted to add to this, I think.
Yeah, I hope my connection is working so you can hear me.
We can.
So I'll keep it short. One of my favorite things, in addition to what Jan said, what he said, is I love that you can actually, one of the design principles of the process model, that you can describe what you do as a verb. That is what you do. You agree on things, you change things, you recover from things, and you just operate them normally, and you always continuously measure and improve stuff you do. So, and that helps in practical real life scenarios. It helps, it's a huge help in the communication with any stakeholder when you do any kind of process or practice related work. You ask, but okay, what is it we actually do? Well, we try to agree upon this thing. Okay, I know where I start. It's about from the contract management, described as a verb, agree, and take it from there. It's a huge practical tool in everyday work.
It certainly is. It certainly is. It's a very, very, very tangible, practical tool. It's something that you can get your hands around, okay, and your mind at the same time. And it gives you that starting point to say, well, what am I actually doing here? Am I trying to fix something? Am I trying to implement something? You know, am I trying to get something working again? And once you do that and you categorize what it is you're doing, it gives you that starting point straight away. So thank you, guys. That's really, really awesome. Okay, I think we're going to move on quickly as we're getting lots of live questions in. So our next question, and Sönke, I'm going to start with you with this one. What makes the USM process model unique?
it's already genius as it is, but what we have to see, it's like it's missing all redundancies. So making, it's not just another framework, it's a real method, and against methods you can prove against. So what is really great that by reducing redundancy in a process model, reducing the amounts of processes, you open the door for simplifying things and then have every work instruction under governance of these 5 processes. And that's the, like where we want to go. We want a simple, unified model, but like it has to keep all the complexity, and anything might be ISO certification or other requirements we have, they can be proved against this method. So that, I think, makes it really USM a unique process model.
Yeah, I like that. And that is true. You can prove it against a model, right? Against the method, should we say. That is what makes this very different. Okay, Jan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Sönke put his finger on a very unique characteristic of this process model, and that is that it's completely non-redundant, which means that every activity is in there only once. And there's a reason for that, because redundancy is the arch enemy of efficiency. So anytime you have a redundant system, it's not efficient as it could be. So what we created was the maximum non-redundant process model, and that has a consequence, because now each component of that interacting and integrated process model requires some pieces of the others. And that leads to an astonishing result. That means that any interaction with a system can now be decomposed into one of 8 different tracks. That's what we call architectural patterns. And because it's non-redundant, we can use every component in this without applying an activity more than once. And each one is controlled from its own perspective. So the only options we have to run something through the system now is one of these 8. So anything, any service provider in any line of business of any size, where in the world, should ever have to do is one of these 8 patterns. And just imagine the level of standardization and improvement of efficiency you can achieve with something like that.
Absolutely. Amazing. John, you wanted to add to this, I think.
Well, I've been certified and worked with a lot of the frameworks, ITIL and COVID and ISO 20000 and others, and I've not seen any approach that is as simple or as universally applicable as USM's process model. And one of the reasons it's powerful is it's stable, and it complements practice guidance. So that's why we call it unified service management. You can have a stable foundation of the USM process model and use whatever practice guidance you want.
Good point. Absolutely, good point. Okay, let's move on fairly quickly because the questions are stacking up here. How does USM's approach to process modeling differ from traditional approaches, Jan?
I think we've seen a lot of that in the examples that have been mentioned. USM works from an architecture. That means that we work from the heart of the system, and then we generate any practice that aligns to any situation, any condition that you require in any line of business. All the other approaches to service management, including all the best practice frameworks that we all know, like ITIL and COVID, etc., they all work from outside in. They all look at the practices, they make a description of the practices, they are all depending upon the how. So that means that as soon as the how changes, technology changes, the practice needs to be adjusted. That's why we have ITIL version 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe have a 5 and 6 or whatever. So many versions because so many conditions are changing. They are not thinking from the heart of the system to a practical application. They are thinking from practice to, that's the question, to what? They don't have a description of the heart of their system. If you look at, for instance, a nice and well-known technique like lean, very powerful. Lean is looking at the outside, trying to reduce waste, and therefore lean polishes the outside. There's no lean book that you can find that has a description of the inside system, the heart of the system. So therefore, lean is a very useful technique to improve the way people work, but actually you don't get to get the best result of it because there's no combination with an internal systematic approach. So USM and lean are a perfect combination. If you have a good system and then add the technique of lean to it, or if you have a system like USM and then add all the guidance from ITIL version 1, 2, 3, or 4 to it, then you have a perfect combination. They are complementary to each other.
Makes sense. Love it. Absolutely. Mikko.
I really need to say my trademark, what he said. No more, nothing more to add. So
Nothing
it's
more to add.
complementary.
It is. It's complementary, and I was gonna steal your catch line there of what he said because it is so apt. Okay, John, are you gonna do the same as what he said in there?
Well, we could all do that, right? I mean, I think I think it goes back that the USM process modeling is different because it goes back to how USM defines a process, right? The process design criteria. The traditional approaches to process modeling by nature introduce complexity, customization and redundancy. USM process modeling is completely opposite. Provides the enterprise with a simple, universal process structure, and now you can integrate your swim lanes and your practices as needed and unify service management across the enterprise or across the service supply chain. That's the big difference.
That is the big one, yeah. That is a really big one. Fantastic. Okay, next question is, what are the benefits then of using the USM process architecture? Jan, I'm going to kick off with you, and I think we'll only take sort of 2 answers for this because we've got quite a few questions lined up, if you guys don't mind.
Okay.
Jan, yeah, go for it.
Well, the big difference, of course, is that we have a systematic approach to any practice. So if you look at the frameworks that specify practices, like I think you've got an image for that, like ITIL, in this case, ITIL 4. Every practice of ITIL 4 can be generated with a system of USM. Therefore, it's completely complementary, as I said. So this is one of the big benefits of using USM, because you can replace ITIL guidance by COVID guidance or by IT for IT guidance or FITSM guidance or whatever combination of best practices you want to pick from any of the sources out there. The same system can regenerate any of the combinations of your practices. And you don't need to do all the practices. You can just confine yourself to doing the core and then slowly, gradually filling in whatever you need. So I think that is one of the most important benefits. Having that as a system also enables you to do something in terms of complying with standards. Because in a standard, we are required to have a management system in place that complies with all kinds of controls. And controls are always, again, practices. So if you don't have a system, you can't comply consistently and sustainably with those practices. So USM has benefits in terms of compliance, using best practice guidance of any source, whatever you want. Sustainability is the rule.
Sustainability is indeed critical as well. I think I'll take one more. Sönke, do you want to add a few thoughts on this quickly before we move on?
Yes, I think this picture just shows it very, very well. Yeah, that like the benefit is like visible. Yeah, that just 5 processes will make it, and that's where you focus your management system, and that's how it also works in practical conditions. Because, like in all my experience, like all the years, and everybody who's here present, nobody saw that a company is control of all these practices in one management system. We haven't seen that. It didn't happen, but now it's possible. It's really possible to do it just with 5 real processes.
Absolutely. I mean, can you imagine, though, not having that management system Can you imagine the chaos?
Yeah, it's what we see on a daily basis, Nigel. We see that on a daily basis.
We don't have to imagine.
Yeah, the reality is that most organizations are sitting in that exact boat. Okay. And they really do need to take a look at this at USM. So I think over time, this is definitely going to be more and more the norm rather than the exception.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at our next question. What does it take to adopt the USM processes? Jan, I'm just going to, if you don't mind, going to get you to answer this very briefly.
Yeah, well, many companies, all organizations, I guess, will have standardized routines for whatever they do in a repeatable way. And what you need to do is to find those repeatable routines that you already have established and simply redefine them by aligning them with the logic of the USM workflows. So if you do that one by one, slowly, and by changing or updating the version and just putting it back in your system with the same name and an upgraded version number, no more than that. But it's now aligned to the logic of the 5-process model. Then step by step, your big tanker, because you're a big tanker as a company, will slowly be turning its course towards the logic of the USM heart of the system. And that's the way to use these 8 workflows to redefine and realign anything you are doing on a practical base in, let's say, a standardized format.
Fantastic. So I just want to add to that, whilst Jan gave a much more coherent answer than I would ever be able to, I do want to say that there is a team of people on this call and many others out there who are able to and willing to help you. Okay, reach out to this group. You can find our details, contact details on the APMG's events page for this event. Feel free to reach out to us. Go to the USM Wiki as well. There's lots and lots of information on there. But if you need guidance, there are many, many people around the world who can give that to you. Okay? Even if you need a couple of hours consulting to get kickstarted, please do not feel like you can't ask. That's the most important thing. Reach out. All right. So I think let's take some more questions. So our first live question here is, how does USM align with ITIL 4? I think we covered that a little bit earlier, so we're not going to go into too much detail here. In fact, I think I'll just cover this answer off on behalf of everybody. Take a look at the previous 2 questions back where we spoke about putting together the normal USM processes and how those align to every other framework out there, basically. You can map it back all the way. So I'm not going to spend I think we don't need to spend any more time on this question unless anybody wants to add anything to that.
No.
Okay, we're good.
Read the book.
There's a book. Yep.
Well, I would add one thing.
Sure.
You need to remember that anyone that implements ITIL or deploys ITIL adapts it to their needs. So you can't just look in a book and get a mapping and that's going to fit for you. You've got to localize it for your requirements, and that hasn't changed.
No.
So there's no difference there.
Yep, absolutely. That hasn't changed. And I'll just remind you of this image here quickly, guys. Okay, you need to go back and look at this image. It is the heart of how you would do this. Okay, so it maps to everything. Okay, all right, everybody. Let's take a look at the next question, which is, so is there a service management process? And if so, is service management a customer relevant process? Yeah.
I think this is a verbal thing. This is semantics.
Yes.
Service management uses people, process, and technology to deliver services. So there are processes in the management of your services, the 5 processes that we explained. So there's no one thing we call the service management process. Service management uses a number of processes to do everything that's required, its activities.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. And I think service management is more of a concept than anything else. It's a collective term we use to how we do this. So, and there are definitions. And if you look back at episode 1 of this, there's a good opportunity, folks. Go back to episode 1. If you ask 100 people what service management is, you'll get 100 different answers. Okay, but look at the USM definition and it'll give you a very, very good back to that. Okay, so let's take a look at our next question here. Is it correct to say that USM doesn't include something like process mining? Typically, process mining involves a technology that supports and operates a process, doesn't it?
Yeah. Which process would that be?
Right.
This is an exam test.
But just
why?
for clarity,
As Nigel, you said it. You have to ask for the why. Why are you doing process mining?
Yep.
The answer will provide the answer to this question. The only reason to do process mining is to improve whatever you are doing. Now, this is an example of the process of improve, where someone is looking at all kinds of data, in this case, process data, and he's going to mine it to find an optimization of the way you do things, which is an improve activity that probably requires a change.
Absolutely. And it probably should require a change if the data shows that there is, in fact, improvement capability in that area.
And if something structurally is changing.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wonder if they're using the word process in the traditional manner, lower levels of work.
This is practice mining, John. What they call process mining is actually practice mining, because you can't mine processes. You would be ready in 15 minutes. You are practice mining.
Yeah.
That's where the data is.
Yeah.
That is true. The data doesn't live in the process. Absolutely right. The data lives in the practice, not the process. So, and does it include it? Yes, it does. And it's in the improvement part. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there we go. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's have a look here. So who is not part of a process? Hence, swim lanes are completely wrong.
No, swim lanes are correct, but who is indeed not in the process? If you add who to the process, you get a swim lane.
Correct.
That's what BPMN says.
Right, but that doesn't mean you can't use swim lanes ever again, right? If you want to analyze your routines and your practices, you use swim lanes. Go ahead.
I was just going to add. This actually is where the difference. Sorry, between a process and a practice comes in. Okay.
For every activity in the process, you add who is responsible for executing that process or that activity, that action in that step. That's the answer to the who and the what. And that can be described in a hierarchy model or in a swim lane or any other technique you prefer.
Yeah.
But it's delivering your procedures.
Yeah, it is. And I've even seen people use little movie files to create these things with, believe it or not. And sometimes there's merit in that if you're trying to explain to people the simplicity or to keep it simple, right? This happens,
within
this
a month,
person does that. And
within a month, I'm sure that one of the AI tools is going to deliver your videos if you just provide them with some logic of processes. They will create a video.
It will, absolutely. And in fact, Jan, the scary part is that is already there.
It's there.
Yeah. It is there. Yeah. However,
we should remind the audience that we're real.
We're real.
Yes, we are real. Yes.
In a month, they won't believe you.
They won't believe us. No, they will. They absolutely will, because I'm sure at some point I'll make a mess of something, and then it's definitely not AI driven, right? No, I think AI is definitely there. But again, a word of caution with AI. AI has to be checked. Okay, you cannot just do something with AI and expect 100% accuracy of that, right? AI is only as good as the model it's built on. Yeah.
You always need a combination of HI, human intelligence, and artificial intelligence. HI, AI are always two pairs.
Quite right. So I don't think we could deliver this show with just AI alone, no, but we might be able to use AI for parts of it, which would help us.
Absolutely.
To automate. Yeah, you never know. I'll work on that. Yeah. Okay, next question. I've always thought that ITIL for value streams were an analytic tool, but I recently learned that companies are implementing them. I suppose they are embedded in processes.
No.
Jan, set us straight here.
I posted a comment of this on LinkedIn yesterday. I had 10,000 views already. This is a hot topic. Value streams and value change are the perspective of the provider on the things we do, the workflows, the flows of the work. Customer journeys are the user perspective on the same thing. So value streams are just a concept, a perspective on something that you must do. You don't do value streams, you do workflows. You do the work. The flow of the work is in what you do. Value streams are just perspectives from a specific interest. In this case, the provider.
Makes sense. John?
Yeah, and the value stream analysis inevitably gets down quickly to the practice level.
Exactly.
Right? Very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So that's just
Not
the
in
nature
processes, in practices. Absolutely right. John passed
Yes. Absolutely right. In processes,
Yeah.
it is not. It is in practices. So
Exactly.
very, very good points, guys. And I like that the way that the perspective is the critical key part of that sentence. Okay. Mikko?
Yeah, and that's not to say that there is, for example, a technique you use, value stream mapping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good technique to do
It's
on
a
a
technique.
practice level. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's good use for all these techniques. Like all the ITIL guidance, it is actually more perfect than people understand, because it's like hidden gems. You can't see it unless you have something like a management system that enables you to apply them in a systematic way. There's so much hidden in there. People simply don't get to it.
No, absolutely. And I think because of they lack the management system, the interpretation becomes a challenge for them.
And everyone needs to define its own locally defined management system. And that's where USM kicks in. We've got a perfectly aligned, maximum efficient, integrated and integral management system that aligns to any kind of business.
Makes sense.
Enterprise service management. All the way.
Enterprise service management, for sure.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else want to add to this, or can we move on? We good? Okay, good
Next.
stuff. Let's move on. Okay. In the process model, is value delivered to the customer, or is it created solely on the customer side while USM enables this through customer-focused service delivery? Well, I would argue that your process, first off, isn't really what's delivering the value, but I'll hand that back to Jan to start us off.
Now, first of all, this refers to the concept of service and value. Value is something that is created on the side of the customer by the effort of the provider. The provider offers something, that's what we call a facility, to a customer. He can use that to enhance their business, and they support the continuity of that facility. So value is created on the side of the customer. People always talk about co-creation of value. There's no co-creation. The value is created by one for the other. That's what service management is all about. And of course, there's a value that's delivered in return, like money or happiness or whatever and dimension you can come up with. But value is created by using something that you couldn't use without the effort of the provider.
Yep, absolutely. I think that answers this question without a doubt. Okay, we're going to take our last question for the day. And the last question is, on the process model, value is being delivered to a customer. Isn't it rather the case that the value is created only at one customer side? Or this is actually the same pretty
question.
much the same as the previous one, right?
Next.
So I think we'll pass on that then. Okay, guys, we've answered that. And I think at this point in time, we are unfortunately out of time for today's event. So what I'm going to do is just going to walk around the panel for your closing comments. I'm going to start in reverse order today. So John, if you don't mind, why don't you kick us off with your closing remarks?
Well, I would say if you're familiar with service management, try and open your mind and think a little differently. Get out of your ITIL book for 10 minutes and think about USM. I have 20 years of experience. I was an ITIL. I drank the ITIL Kool-Aid, and I will tell you that this is something that customers should be taking a very, very close look at.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, John. Also, did ITIL from the origins of version 2. And I haven't seen anything like USM. I've seen some other people tried early on, but USM is definitely unique in its ability to tie this all together. Sönke, your closing remarks, please.
Yes, they also for everybody who was watching and listening us, it's really like as unique it is, it's also like a effort of rethinking what we did so far. And it's a little bit depressing. For me, it was depressing searching 20 years for a slim service management model, and then meeting a Dutch guy who said, I wrote that. And he put it in 200 pages. So like, this is something to digest. And like, maybe we think this has to be complicated. This has to be big effort, but the biggest effort is really to rethink how we did things, what we achieved with that. And then, it doesn't matter that its name is USM, but then look objectively, like what is there, and understanding this, like it's like a very big value for the future for organizations that want to deliver enterprise service management. That's not only my gut feeling, but I think that's the point that we reached in the service management journey, that we can really do this now.
Yep, agreed, Sönke, absolutely. If you're serious about delivering value through service management, you absolutely have to look at USM. Mikko, your closing comments, please.
Yeah, I really double on all what John and Sönke said. And I have actually a practical little exercise, thought exercise for everyone looking at listening. When you go back to your daily work and you work on the things usually organizations call processes, look at them and try to find one of the 5 verbs. So am I agreeing? Am I changing? Am I recovering? Am I just operating? Or am I improving the stuff? Just do that little exercise and then go to USM Wiki and take it from there. You won't regret it, I promise.
Yep. Fantastic advice, Mikko. Fantastic advice. Jan, your closing comments, please.
Well, I've got 3 comments that you haven't heard before, I guess. That is rethink, rethink, and rethink.
I love that.
That's actually the only thing you need to do. Get out of the treadmill. Get away from the ideas that you've been learning for decades, because they don't work. That's what Einstein told us. Rethink what you're doing. Use Mikko's simple trick. Ask yourselves, what am I doing? It really is simple. You only need to see it. It's out there. You can easily get it. It's almost perfectly for free, because there's a non-commercial organization behind this. We share everything. The knowledge is free and to be shared. So this is the opposite of the well-known frameworks as we know them, as what that turned into lately. So rethink and do it simple.
Absolutely agree. So just a reminder to everybody, the QR code on screen now will take you directly to the USM main wiki page. So if you need some information, you want some information, we strongly urge you or encourage you to go and take a look at that page. And it's very logical. You can find out pretty much anything you want through the USM wiki, and that's your starting point. All right. And I think somebody asked earlier on, are those diagrams available? Yes, they are mostly all in the USM wiki already. Okay. So if you want to find out more about them, pop into the wiki. You'll find them in the relevant sections. And if you can't find something, just ask us and we'll make sure you get a copy of it. All right. Well, I just want to say, panel, thank you so much for today. It's great having you on the event as usual. Okay, so I think let's move on, just take a look at what's coming up. Over on our website, by the way, you can take a look at the answers to over 3,000 questions now, which is quite amazing. It's a really good resource. Don't forget, you can also listen to the audio podcasts. Yeah. Coming up this Thursday, the 17th, it's going to be at 3 p.m. UK time, BST, Navigating Business Challenges with Design Thinking. That should be a really, really interesting event. Also, just a reminder, Monday, the 21st of October, all the way through to Wednesday, the 23rd, is the World BRM Connect Conference. So if you want to find out more about that, just pop onto our website. And we will give you some more information soon about our next USM event. So don't worry, you've signed up for the newsletter. We'll pop you some information about what it is that we're going to be talking about next. And that should be always interesting. And we'll give you the dates, of course, for that event. All right, everybody, thank you so much. It's been wonderful hosting you again today. We will see you on the next show. Goodbye, everybody.